Ramner, Glendale Police Department Assistant Chief Colby Brandt, Mesa Police Department's Chief Ken Cost, Tempe Police Department Assistant Chief James Swig, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms Special Agent in Charge Brendan Iber, Drug Enforcement Agency Special Agent in Charge Sherry Oz, and Homeland Security Investigations Special Agent in Charge Frank Barola. Due to an unforeseen scheduling conflict, U.S. Attorney Gary Racino was regrettably unable to attend today's press conference. The purpose of today's press conference is to provide the results and methodology employed for Operation Northstar. U.S. Marshal Van Bayless will start us off by providing information on the operation. Chief Sullivan will then give us his insights. And lastly, County Attorney Rachel Mitchell will speak. Ben.
Good afternoon. I want to begin by thanking the members of the media for joining us here today to carry this message back to our communities. I stand on this stage honored and humbled to represent the United States Marshal Service, District of Arizona's amazing team, and to be joined by these women and men that are professionally represent their agencies and this unified law enforcement group. Each of them have for many years been stalwart partners to the U.S. Marshals here in Arizona. They are individually incredibly dedicated law enforcement professionals and leaders. However, it is collectively and by combining resources and expertise that this law enforcement team achieves great success in combating violent crime. Criminal acts and its actors are not bound by the borders of a city, a valley, a state, or our country. Each day, these agencies work together to search and find criminals locally, nationally, and even internationally for acts that occurred in our valley. Operation Northstar is a prime example of the ongoing collaboration and coordination used to locate and apprehend dangerous fugitives who prey on our communities. For 65 days between May to September, the task force targeted wanted persons for crimes that occurred in and around Phoenix. During Operation Northstar, we arrested 301 targeted fugitives, clearing 358 active warrants. Aside from the arrests, we seized 60 firearms, nearly $100,000, 3 vehicles, and more than 234 kilograms of narcotics, including 83 kilograms of fentanyl. Removing dangerous individuals from our streets provides some protection for our community. Removing illegal firearms used in the commission of crime adds another layer of protection. Removing monies used to further illegal acts and removing dangerous drugs like fentanyl saves lives. Previously, we announced Operation We Will Find You, which was conducted in May and June of this summer. That operation provided yet another example of these law enforcement agencies' professionalism as they partner to find and secure missing and exploited children. The Phoenix area teams led the nation with 49 missing children located. Many of these young girls and boys were subject to sex trafficking and abuse. In reading through the heartbreaking stories of victims and their survivors, law enforcement is driven to ensure we provide service and a measure of relief. I highlight these two operations to report back to our communities that we are determined to never stop looking for those that do harm and hope to provide some measure of justice to victims. During Operation Northstar, we conducted several outreach events and a large community roundtable, hosted by our staunch partners, Arizona State University. This inclusive event was attended by law enforcement agency heads and dozens of community and faith-based organizations. It is these interactions where we learn and facilitate meaningful discussions that foster cohesion with a clear path forward. For the past 6 years and continuing to this day, I am consistently impressed by each agency represented here. I want to thank the Phoenix, Chandler, Glendale, Mesa, and Tempe police departments, along with ATF, DEA, HSI, Maricopa County Attorney's Office, and the U.S. Attorney's Office, for their tireless efforts to make a difference in the lives of those we serve. Today's announcement is merely a reflection of what law enforcement does daily across our valley. Despite impacts to manpower and resources, These agencies stay laser focused and absolute in assisting one another. We endeavor to provide safer communities by locating and apprehending those who harm our fellow neighbors, and by removing dangerous drugs and illegal firearms from our community before they can hurt another child or another community member. The Phoenix Police Department is an exemplary law enforcement agency filled with thousands of these dedicated personnel. In both operations, we work closely with them and are continuing dozens of spin-off investigations where they always go all in and collaboratively work together. Each agency on stage today works closely with this great department. With that, I am honored to turn the time over to Chief Sullivan from the Phoenix Police Department.
Thanks, Van. You know, before we get started here, I just have to acknowledge the women and men that go out and do this work every day. We at the Phoenix Police Department know the risk that comes to us. We know it too well. Just in the last couple of weeks, we had to lay one of ours to rest that is willing to go out and do this work. And, you know, we have to honor the people that are willing to go out and do this incredibly important and difficult work. You know, as a department, we enjoy great partnerships with many local, state, and federal partners, and this is just another example of that. Operation Northstar took place over the last 3 months, and it was headed up by the U.S. Marshals, and it's exactly in line with the goals of the Phoenix Police Department's crime reduction plan. The idea of going after the most violent offenders who target community and commit the majority of violent crime is critical to keeping our community safe. The idea of going after those with warrants is critical to keeping our community safe. And the idea of going after those who illegally possess firearms when they are prohibited by law is critical to keeping our community safe. Because of Operation Northstar, those who live, work, and visit Phoenix are safer today than they were before. When people ask about data-driven policing, it's not just a buzz phrase. And you're seeing an example of what data-driven policing is in this operation. We're so grateful for the collaboration of all of our law enforcement partners that are up here with us today. And just because this formal operation is over, it does not mean that our work stops. The Phoenix Police Department is committed to developing strategies at reducing crime in our community. And we welcome the opportunity to continue to work with local, state, and federal partners, as well as our community, because together we can make a difference. Now it's my pleasure to introduce another great partner, Maricopa County Attorney Rachel Mitchell.
Thanks, Chief Sullivan. Thank you to Acting U.S. Marshal Van Bayless for inviting us today and also partnering with us in this and so many other endeavors. You know, time and time again, my office sees the ripple effect of having serious offenders in our communities. These are people that have a very high propensity for violence, who commit sex crimes, who bring drugs and poison like fentanyl into our neighborhoods, and who use firearms to hurt and kill others, including recently a Phoenix police officer. When we don't pay attention and let this type of crime go unchecked, our communities suffer. These crimes destabilize neighborhoods, affect the economic well-being of the people who live here, and erode safety and the feeling of safety. We know that when people live in fear, they are less likely to call for help and engage with law enforcement. It's important to take note when we see the results of a big roundup like Operation Northstar. It's equally important to acknowledge the daily collaboration that pushes back on defendants at every level. Every single day, the prosecutors in my office work with Phoenix Police Department and other law enforcement agencies like the U.S. Marshals Service to ensure that we achieve justice. If we can bring people to justice early to lesser offenders, the abiding hope is that they'll be deterred from a life of major crime. It all matters, every bit of it. So today I congratulate the U.S. Marshals Service and the Phoenix Police, as well as our many other partners that are represented up here today on the success of Operation Northstar. And I also commend these agencies for their constant efforts to hold criminals accountable for the damage that they cause to our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Attorney Mitchell, Chief Sullivan, and Marshal Bayless. In addition to the posters in front of you, I want to direct your attention to the monitors that you'll see. There's an infographic that contains significant arrests and photos from our operation. Media release will be sent out after the press conference with the names of everyone present today. It will also include a link to footage from the operation and photos. If there is interest in any one-on-one interviews, let me know and I'll coordinate that for you. Thank you.
I'm going to just take questions up there. Would that be okay?
Yeah.
Van, can you talk a little bit about, I know it says it up there, why Phoenix is one of the 10 cities picked?
Yeah, so it will be in some additional information that is sent out after this. It was based on the FBI's UCR, so Phoenix did have a crime rate that was one of the major cities, so not the highest in the country by any means, but it did reach a level for the size of city that it is, that it became a targeted city. Yes, ma'am.
I saw Richard Taplin up there, murder suspect. Would you say he's the most significant person picked up here?
I would say that there was several cases were identified back in Washington, D.C. There were significant cases that they put on there. Taplin was one of them. There are several other cases that we're not going to discuss yet that are homicide suspects that unfortunately are not within our country. Those are going to be very significant. We hope to have another announcement pretty soon on some of those.
You said Washington, D.C. Can you explain how stuff that happens here is looked into there?
Yeah, so since the U.S. Marshals is a federal agency, a lot of our guidance and direction comes from our headquarters, which is back in D.C. This initiative, Operation Northstar, is the second iteration that they've ran. The first iteration was last year where they selected 10 cities. This year they selected 10 cities. That's between the Director of the Marshal Service and the Attorney General of the United States.
Were there any incidents during any of these apprehensions, any officer-involved shootings, any officers attacked, anybody hurt?
Yeah, so unfortunately, it's far too common that it occurs in this line of work that we're going after very dangerous individuals. As the county attorney addressed, there is a high propensity for violence, and a lot of these folks do not want to go into custody. There was some uses of force during this operation. Some of those are still under investigation, so I won't discuss them in detail. But unfortunately, it's a common occurrence, and it's for all these agencies that are here on stage today. Officers are placed in very, very bad situations, and we just ask that those that come in contact with law enforcement, that they comply and that they go and they have their day in court.
Now, with the different cities from the Valley being represented here, is that because we had incidents in each city, or are they just part of that task force?
Yeah, great question. So we have 22 different agencies throughout Arizona that are part of the U.S. Marshals Wanted Task Force. These agencies that are on stage today work with us every single day throughout the Valley.
Chief, can you talk a little bit about how important it is to have the federal backing for operations like this to get people off the streets?
You know, the collaboration between our federal partners and our other local and state partners is critically important. We all know the staffing challenges that we face in the Phoenix Police Department, and we can only do it if we work together. So these partnerships are even more important today than I would say than when we had staffing that was at a much higher level. We have to depend on each other.
And so in the presser, it was mentioned that law enforcement was working with local community members, et cetera, to help maybe prevent crimes, future crimes. Can you kind of speak a little bit to that and how this ONS has been collaborating with communities?
Yeah, so the ONS has a multi-pronged approach. One of them is engagement with the community. So during this operation, we took advantage and partnered with Arizona State University to provide kind of a neutral facility where we can invite leaders from the communities, but also these faith-based groups. We had a couple dozen that attended. We had a long conversation. A lot of the individuals that are on stage today were there. We got to hear concerns from community members, and we got to address some of them. And that's just a beginning. It, again, just like Chief Sullivan just said, it's about relationships. So being able to break through if there is any communication, borders or hurdles, and being able to engage with them more often. Since that interaction occurred, we've received numerous emails and phone calls, and we have put them in contact with other agencies if there was concerns. A lot of times we found that it's a lack of communication or maybe understanding. It's not necessarily that something is broken.
Was Kaplan the only murder suspect here?
No, there was 5. There was 5 during this operation. There's an additional 9 that are outside of the state of Arizona that we're continuing to work.
You said 9 more?
Yes, ma'am.
There's a lot of
Yeah.
Valley cities represented here today. Can you speak to specific hubs, whether it's maybe the 27th Avenue corridor or the Lady that were involved in this operation?
Yeah, so the targeted warrants, so it had to meet certain criteria, which is on the screens. The information was just ran of individuals wanted that met those requirements. So a lot of people, and that's what I was speaking to, is that they're not confined to a border of a city. Unfortunately, in a valley, a metroplex like this, we get a lot of bleed over, spill over from city to city. So while we focused, this wasn't an operation of a saturation in a certain part of Phoenix. It was working targeted individuals. So sometimes they are in that corridor, sometimes they may be in one of our neighboring cities. And that's why it's so critical to have all these partners and federal agencies that are utilizing all their resources so that we can find that individual, we can arrest that individual safely, no matter where they are. They may not be in the area that we're seeing a crime spike in. We're going after the individuals, the bad actors that were wanted in this. Yes, ma'am.
Can you say like what areas of the valley some of these people were residing in, or where they were captured? What areas of the valley?
Yeah, I would have to do a breakdown, the entire valley. So we have criminal acts that take place in Phoenix, and they're not residents of Phoenix. They're residents of a neighboring city. Or likewise, we have residents of Phoenix that are committing crimes in some of these other cities that are on stage right now. The arrests truly occurred all over the valley throughout the state. I believe I saw at least 11 other states that people had fled to, that we sent leads out to the other U.S. Marshals task forces throughout the country. And we have at least 12 individuals in Mexico that we're working with the Mexican government on.
What is your message to these criminals, whether it's, here in the Valley, here in Phoenix, and on a local and federal level that you guys are going after them?
Well, individuals that we're going after and know that they're wanted. They know that they committed a crime. They know that they could do the right thing and they could self-surrender. They know that they're going to have to face this at one point or another. It's much better for them to get into the process and be able to have their day in court and go through it than to hide out or continue to commit crimes and impact our communities. So I'd ask them to do the right thing and to contact their local jurisdiction or whoever they're wanted by and figure out a self-surrender. That's it.
Is there any variation between like men, women? Is there like a breakdown where there's some women, mostly men?
I would say mostly men. We have not broken down demographics or genders or anything else. Yes, ma'am. All right, thank you.
Wherever you can work with.